Maybe you have some rough news or some crazy thing you're going to show a friend or a family member. And right before you do, you say, okay, Mom, son, don't freak out. And the reason is because you're about to show them or tell them something that's going to be a big surprise. In the Bible, the most common command over anything is do not be afraid. And the way that it's said as you read it in the original language reads a lot like what we would say in English today as like, don't freak out. Just hold on a second, take a breath, don't freak out. And the reason is because very often when God says do not be afraid, it precedes something both amazing and scary that's about to happen. You know, the word awesome and awful mean almost the same thing in their etymology. To have awe. It's scary, it's intense, it's like what's about to happen. And God will say, do not be afraid before He parts the Red Sea or before an angel appears or before something He's going to ask you to do, right? And so I think that as we talk a lot about faith, Jesus certainly does, the power of faith in life, well, we all kind of know instinctively the opposite of faith is fear. That in the same way that faith sort of opens the door and powers the thing that's supposed to happen, fear can hamstring it. It can cripple it. It can keep it from being. And so all of us, we can, if we reflect on it, we know the destructive power of fear of any kind. If you're thinking about in the Bible, well, where does God really say, do not be afraid? Probably one of the first things that comes to mind if you read the Bible a lot is when angels appear. I think in most cases, when an angel appears to a person, the first thing they say is, do not be afraid, or fear not, or something to that degree. And there's good reason. There has been a lot of talk about what are biblically accurate angels really like. Now, when you think of an angel in the Bible, you probably picture a dude, like a guy, for sure has a white robe and a six-pack, maybe a sword. So he's cool looking, but not a monster. He looks interesting. Maybe he's strong and powerful. Maybe he's glowing. This is what our imagination has, and that for sure is in the Bible. That's what happens when an angel appears at the empty tomb and informs them he's no longer here, he's risen. It's a human-looking angel. But we also can reflect that that's not always the kind of angel that appears. So God always says when He appears as angels, fear not. And I believe that that's because fear cripples, in many ways, God's work in our lives. It cripples the progress that God's called us to make. It keeps us and even causes us to do dumb things. Fear very often leads us into the very thing we were worried that would happen. It's a classic literary device. If you've got kids or you just love cartoons like I do, you've seen Kung Fu Panda, which is one of the greatest cartoons of all time. So well done, such a great story, so well animated. And in the scene at the beginning, there is this evil tiger villain that's in prison, and he's just like basically picture a superhero that's, caught. And then there's this head of all the good guys, of all the Kung Fu guys. He's this old turtle that's very wise. And he tells his general, I've had a dream that the evil tiger is going to escape. And so the general freaks out and sends a goose to double the prison guard. And when he does that, the old turtle says a quote from Jean de La Fontaine, who was a fabulist. A fabulist is someone who writes fables. He quotes John de La Fontaine and he says, one often meets his destiny on the road he took to avoid it. And of course, in this story, the goose that's sent to double the guard, a feather falls from his back that the tiger uses to pick the lock and he escapes the jail, right? So you see an example of that. But maybe you can think of lots of examples in your own life where because of your fear and anxiety, you actually caused the thing that you were afraid of. You were worried about losing your job, and so that actually caused you to lose your job. You were worried about messing up your relationship, and the worry itself messed up your relationship. When we are in a period of crippling fear for a long period, sometimes even a short period of time, we don't recognize the injuries we're sustaining, the people we're hurting, the mess we're making, the churches we're destroying, the lives we're breaking, the relationships that we're hampering, until it's too late. And all we have at the end of that is a big bunch of regret, saying to ourselves, I wish I'd been braver. Friend, God has not given you a spirit of fear. He has given you a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. God can do a lot with your faith, but don't cripple your destiny by plaguing it with fear. Don't live every day being afraid of this and afraid of that and bothered by this. Instead, be at peace with where you are now. Pray to the Lord and trust that He hears your prayer. Trust that His promises are true. Trust that He's going to come through for you. And then enjoy your day and your next meal and your friends and your family. It's a better way to live life, and it's a more successful way to live life. That's who you are. Not afraid, not always worried, not constantly going, but at peace, knowing that there is this big freaky angel in the background fighting for your behalf. Can I get an amen? So, we know that something like a drowning person is a dangerous person. If you've ever done junior lifeguards or anything like that, you know this is very dangerous, not just for her, but for anyone that goes to help her. Because someone who's freaking out like that tends to grab the closest thing and pull it down with her. So you might say to me, so what do I do? Just stop splashing around? And the answer is yes. You know, they actually teach you in survival that if you were to fall out of a boat in the middle of the ocean, for example, and you needed to stay afloat for a long time, and maybe you're not a great swimmer, or even if you are a great swimmer, to preserve your energy to stay afloat, they teach you this thing called the dead man float, or sometimes it's called the jellyfish float. And all you're supposed to do is just relax. You take a big gulp of breath so that you become buoyant, and you let your arms and face and legs dangle in the water. Kind of feels nice. Try it sometime next time you're in the pool. And you just bring your head up and take a breath, and then stick your face back down in the water. And you just do that until someone comes and saves you. Even there, you can see that relaxing is the way out of your trouble, not splashing around. Some of us, we just need to chill out. And that's, I almost said, that's you. Well, that's me. Very often when a crisis happens, when you can be the calm one, when you take a deep breath, just take that extra second. It just takes a second to be different than everybody else in the room. Just take a second and think, watch, and pray. Watch what God will do in that moment. It's a critical difference when it comes to key decisions you're going to make in your life. A decision made from thoughtful repose versus a decision made from panic. It is a night and day difference. You watch, it'll make a difference in your life. God is saying to you, fear not. Don't freak out. He's got this. He's got this. Our world is constantly training you to be scared so you'll spend more money. Did you know that? People are making money off of you being afraid. If I turn the news on today, breaking, I'm going to hear about a new shooting, a new variant, a new war, a new storm, murder hornets. Don't hear that these things aren't important and don't affect my life. They do. But in most of these cases, I have little or no control over what will happen. I can join 300 million people and vote once every 4 years. But other than that, what can I do about these things? Very little. What news do I have other than what I didn't know yesterday about these things? Very little. And while I'm spending hours obsessively worrying about things I have no control over, I'm not paying attention to that new spot on my back. I really should get it checked out. Right? I'm not paying attention to my blood pressure. I'm not paying attention to, my smoking habit. I don't smoke, by the way, but if I smoked. I forgot to make my bed this morning. Is my son okay? Is my neighbor okay? And so what happens is the more we're obsessed and afraid of the things we can't control, we don't notice as much the really important things in our lives that we can control. That's not good. This isn't good. Don't watch as much news. Watch a little bit, like once a week. It's probably good. Just take it or leave it. It's just some friendly advice from Pastor Bobby. All right. Well, that gets me to the story that we're in today, and I'm going to finish with this. That when God brings the Hebrew people out of Egypt and into the promised land, He's not just taking them from one geographical location to another. He's causing them to convert from one type of person to another. He wants them to stop having the mind and the behavior of slaves and have the mind and the behavior of warriors. And this is not an easy switch. God might be saying to you today, the Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. I know in my life, the greatest moments and victories that I've had very often just came out of the blue. It wasn't something I asked for. I needed help. I needed a way out. But some random thing saved me. Maybe you've had experiences like that. And that is what makes following the Lord so interesting. Some of the stories and ways that God will work in your life, they're not believable almost. If you were to write them down after they happen, people would say, this doesn't seem like it could actually happen, but they do. That's why very often when we act out of fear, we're like trying to move things faster than they're supposed to. And we don't get to really see what God had in store for us that whole time. God has a good victory coming your way, but sometimes we have to be still and practice our faith and trust in that. I can't imagine trying to handle the thought of death without knowing the Lord. You have to know the Lord. Are you at peace with God?